I'm Chris Pollock. I'm the Natural Resource Manager for the Woodridge Park District. I've been here for 15 years, basically taking care of all our natural areas, the trees, the wetlands, prairies, woodlands in these areas. We have about 40 different sites, a little over 200 acres of natural area in the district. Back in about 2015, we started doing invasive removals at different sites, and that went on for several years, and we've ended up clearing out most of the invasive brush from a lot of our sites. Nearly impossible. So there were a few paths that kind of were established by deer and other wildlife out there, but for the most part, you're crouching down and having to like crawl through areas to get from place to place, just because of all the dense branching and the dense formation of the woods there. If you can imagine like being a buck or something with an antler rack kind of growing through there, it's just nearly impossible. You'd be getting hung up on everything, lose stuff out there, and having to like basically crawl to get from spot to spot. We had a tree inventory that was done in 2018 by an independent contractor, and they identified all the trees on the site that were over 6 inches in diameter. They found that the bulk of them were native, but then just very weedy species. Cottonwoods, box elders, and then cherries. So these are all trees that are they're weedy by nature. They kind of just get blown in by wind or deposited by birds and that out there. And they're kind of what they call pioneer species. So they're just species that can kind of come in into disturbed areas and start growing in that. That inventory only, like I said, only included stuff that was 6 inches or greater in diameter. So a lot of the brush wasn't included in there. So that was all the buckthorn, honeysuckle that just kind of choked everything out. In order to get out there and really see what's there, we needed to get these invasive species removed first. We also had wetland delineations that were done, and they found that the plants that were out there were also very poor quality. So just kind of low value plants again that were kind of thrive on disturbance and everything there. Yes, we hired Davy Tree contractor to remove all the invasive species. They started back in February, basically 2 months to complete it all. They have four species that they're targeting. It's buckthorn, honeysuckle, mulberry, and multiflora rose. Those are all just kind of more aggressive, non-native species that were out there. Basically just cutting with chainsaws and clearing saws. So they go through, they would cut that, they would take that material and move it to their chipper and chip the material and haul it off site. We have a park district crew that's also going through, and we assess the trees for condition to make sure that they're not going to fall in that. So we're looking for other non-native species, trees that are in poor condition, that have severe rot and decay on them, or a severe amount of dead wood in the branches and that. We're making sure that those aren't going to be along the pathways or other active use areas or property lines where they could impact neighboring homes. My team is pretty much taking care of anything within like 50 feet of the edge that could possibly impact the active park sites, the turf areas and paths and everything out there. We're still kind of analyzing the trees that are remaining out there. Even though it's a highly disturbed site, I'm hoping that we're going to have some native species coming in, even if they are kind of the weedier species that are out there. We should start to see some of them start to filter back from the seed bank that's out there. So there will be some herbicide application and then prescribed fire, which will probably typically be on like a 3 to 5 year basis. So and the herbicide is very minimal there too. It's not like you're spraying your lawn like with a herbicide to keep all your dandelions down. This is very like small applications where you're just doing a small spot treatment on the cut stumps that you've done. So it's just like little, literally drops of herbicide on there. It just prevents the plants from resprouting because we're not actually like ripping out the roots and disturbing the soil or anything. We just cut the stump flush and then that stays there. And then you treat it with the outside area of it with an herbicide that prevents it from regrowing. Most of our native plants, especially prairie plants, are designed to withstand burns. They have a growing point that's deeper in the soil, so that's protected when the fire comes through. And it's an easy way to kind of reduce the amount of non-native species out there too, because the non-native species are not fire adapted. And then I will say, like, we're not going to burn like everything. So like in areas where we're planting the new trees, we're not going to burn those areas because we want those trees to establish. So it's going to be focused on areas that are going to have some native prairie stuff, Right now, that's kind of like the berms on the sled hill, the sides of them there, where we have like a native area established there, and then some areas north of where the current garden plots are. That's been more open just historically, and we have some prairie grass and native, forbs out there, flowers. So the burn window is typically from like the end of the growing season, so middle to end of October, all the way through the end of April, really. What we're really looking at burning right now is more of like the leaf litter out there to get that soil cleaned up and prepared. Typically, we're looking for different fuel sources. It'll be like the grasses out there are basically the main fuel source. We're doing prescribed burns on site. So we have to have certain humidity levels, certain wind conditions and speeds, good conditions overall for it to actually happen. Because it's all divided up with like the wetlands that we have through there, like the drainage ways, those are all typically wet, and the amount of water that we currently have on the site, we have to wait for things to dry up. We look at starting at a safe point and usually kind of back burning for areas so we can manage it safely, and it's just kind of sections at a time. So there might be some areas that are a little more conducive to burning that'll be a little bit sooner before we can do it. Otherwise, we might not be able to get to it all. We don't really want to tear everything up and impact what could actually come out there and grow. We're gonna with the seeding and everything that we're doing, that's gonna be like the first step. Also, the tree planting that we have going this year is again a first step. So we're gonna be continuing to do tree planting through the years coming up. Just kind of getting small pockets that our staff can maintain adequately. We had some projects before where we had like large trees came in, like after the tornado, we did a large planting project, and then trying to keep all that water to maintain kind of overburdened staff here. So we want to make sure that we're focused on what we can actually get done. And doing these small pockets in different zones of the woods out there will kind of help us maintain that and make sure everything establishes properly. So we've recently received two grants, one from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources for habitat improvement with the park districts, and then also another one from Trees Forever that's also funded by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Forest Service. So with those, we're looking at planting an additional 133 trees out there. They're going to be smaller trees. They're like the 5 to 15 gallon size pots. There are going to be some wet spots there. The two places that we're currently targeting the planting are a little bit drier. One's just right across the street from the community center here. The other one is by the garden plot entrance off of Ravinia and over there. So that one has some wetter spots, but there are some drier portions too. So we'll kind of just have to work around what we can down there. It's 133 total plants. It was approximately, I want to say, like 15 or 16 different species. These will include canopy trees that'll eventually, reach and be like the overstory for everything, of like a 50 feet and above kind of tree. Like oak trees, hickory trees, hackberries, things that are taller and reach all the way up to the top. We have some understory trees also that'll kind of give some height difference in there. Understory trees are going to be in that like 15 to 30-foot range typically. It's like your red buds, ironwood, things like that, and then some shrubs as well. We're kind of rebuilding a whole forest from scratch out there. It's always an active and ongoing process. Basically, if you say you're done with it, then you end up with what we had across the street where it just becomes choked out with invasive species again. So a lot of our communities require that kind of disturbance for like fire or some kind of disturbance that'll go through there and kind of clear stuff out. Stop working on it, then it just kind of slowly creeps back in with the buckthorn and honeysuckle. That'll be several years. So I mean, we'll probably be doing tree planting out there for I'd say at least 3 years, probably closer to 5 to get all these pockets established. And then again, too, with the seeding that we put out there, it's a 3 to 5 year germination time before you actually really start to see them establish themselves. So you'll start to get little stuff out there, but most of the prairie plants in that are going to be focused on the root growth first. So they really want to get their feet in the ground and then they'll start to show above ground. Well, that's kind of been the big thing. Is like there hasn't been food out there for them to eat. They weren't eating the buckthorn or honeysuckle, otherwise it wouldn't be as abundant as it is. So when everybody sees them out in the turf, because that's like the only food source that they had. And turf grass is not anything of nutritional value. It's poor value for nutrition, but that's what they had to eat. Now that we've opened it up, it's going to be a lot more spacious, easier for people and wildlife to access the site. They're going to actually have more food for them to eat throughout the site. We've learned from other sites that we've cleared in that too. Like they stay there. They don't really care if we're out there working. We had a deer the other day. We had 3 different crews that were out, and a group of deer just walked right through the middle of all 3 crews there, just kind of not running, not darting through, just casually strolling through, and no more than 50 feet away from crews and that. So they continue to use the site, even with all the work going on. And then afterwards, it's going to be so much better and, hospitable for them there. They're going to have more food source and more habitat that they can actually utilize. Pretty much anything. I mean, outside there's been rabbits and that, eastern cottontails. There'll just be more birds and a lot more insects and everything too, for butterflies and the bees that'll be able to use the site. So, and then like the different trees and that too, there's all different groups of insects that like having different trees. And basically by planting the diverse trees, we're going to bring in like those other insects and things that'll use those. And that in turn brings in more birds and other wildlife that'll feed upon them.